States, United Kingdom and Europe. Not in the least because a lack of cohesion in the East advantages the West, particularly at a time when the two spheres are at loggerheads over Ukraine, the conflict in the heart of Europe. The Modi-Xi Jinping summit meeting will lay down a path, so we are told, for the officials to evolve into deliverables as time wears on. But its timing has become a major point of debate. What brought China to the table? Was it a concession from India? Was it the prolonged slump in China's economic prospects? China's current economic downturn appears to be structural, not cyclical, putting Xi Jinping in a high-stakes battle to reverse the tide. Experts claim that Xi's legitimacy hinges on delivering prosperity and achieving his strategic goal of doubling per capita GDP by 2035, a goal that once implied China could surpass the US as the world's largest economy. Given that beyond Xi Jinping's personal legitimacy, even the Chinese Communist Party's legitimacy is closely tied to economic performance, Xi Jinping might have ultimately been forced to blink. Putin thus may have only played the role of a catalyst, especially as he wants to project unity in Brics to signal to the USA that Russia isn't isolated and to deny Washington leverage in the East. For now, both India and China are sticking to pro forma responses, heavily couched in diplomasies, but there's no doubt that both are mutually committed to addressing the border dispute on priority. I want you to, viewers, first go over what exactly Prime Minister Modi had said and then also Xi Jinping. Listen in.
भारत और चीन के संबंधों का महत्व केवल हमारे लोगों के लिए ही नहीं, लेकिन वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और प्रगति के लिए भी हमारे संबंध बहुत अहम है। एक्सेलेंसी, सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए।
China and India are both ancient civilizations, major developing countries, and important members of the global South. We are both at a crucial phase in our respective modernization endeavors. It best serves the fundamental interests of our two countries and two peoples, for both sides to keep to the trend of history and the right direction of our bilateral relations. It's important for both sides to have more communication and cooperation, properly handle our differences and disagreements, and to facilitate each other's pursuit of development aspirations. It's also important for both sides to shoulder our international responsibility, set an example for boosting the strength and unity of the developing countries, and to contribute to promoting multipolarization and democracy in international relations.
It's interesting, viewers, that Prime Minister Modi did make a mention of an agreement. He said that we welcome the LAC agreement, though Xi Jinping only referred to the fact that the two countries must strive to expand cooperation and must address the disagreements. A more detailed statement was put out by the Ministry of External Affairs, summing up the objectives of the engagement. And let me take you through some of those statements. First things first, the MEA said that Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping welcomed the LAC agreement after military and diplomatic talks over several weeks. So clearly suggesting that there was a long time when these two sides were engaged, and now after that there has been agreement on certain issues with regards to the LAC. The Prime Minister, the MEA said, underscored importance of not allowing boundary differences to disturb border peace. The statement then went on to say that Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping together noted that special representatives on boundary questions have a critical role, and the special representatives on India-China boundary have been instructed to meet at an early date. What that date is, viewers, remains unspecified. The timelines for these discussions also remain unspecified. It goes on to say the special representatives on Indo-China boundary to meet for first time since December 2019. So at that level, viewers, there hasn't been a discussion. There will now be a discussion. When and what is the timeline for any sort of expedient outcomes has not been set. In the immediate, viewers, expect the NSAs of both sides to return to the drawing board, return also, of course, to the talks table in the hope of effecting disengagements in the coming days in the Demchok and Depsang regions in Ladakh. This has already been spelt out, viewers, by the Indian side before these talks. You will know that in these regions in Ladakh, forces have been arrayed on both sides in eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation for at least 5 years. This potential breakthrough will build on similar agreements brokered in the past in Gogra Hot Springs, North and South Banks, and of the Pangong Tso. 2 other important confidence-building measures, de-escalation and de-induction, will take much longer, much longer, viewers, and progress will also depend on how closely the 2 sides adhere to the de-escalation timelines and red lines as and when they are set down. The Indian side has already expressed the hope that India and China will return to the 2020 status quo ante. If so, this presents a host of opportunities to normalize relations between the 2 countries. But don't hold your breath, viewers, because this could take weeks, months, maybe even a year or so. We don't know. But if it were to happen, and if we do make visible progress over the next few weeks, if the direction is a positive one, then restoration of ties will have a positive impact on regional stability in Eastern Hemisphere. Cooperation, of course, between the 2 also allows for greater stability along the LAC in India's Eastern Theatre. Enhanced bilateral cooperation will create an atmosphere for eventual de-escalation and de-induction, which is troop withdrawal. There will be a cutback in military expenditure as a result incurred due to enhanced force deployment, which can only actually is money saved that can be put elsewhere. Broadening of bilateral trade and business engagements will result, and the resumption of direct passenger flights to China after 4 years. The endorsement of efficacy of India's doctrine of plurilateralism will also, of course, be something that will stand validated. Now let's break this down. Let's first figure out what really transpired today. What are the main takeaways? And for that, let me go straight across to Mr. Kamal Sibal, who's been Foreign Secretary of India. Mr. Sibal, thank you for joining us this evening. What are the main takeaways from the talks, and do they constitute a thaw, as New Delhi has claimed?
Well, the biggest takeaway is that this meeting took place, which means that they can now meet in the future too. Our Prime Minister has told President Xi Jinping that India will fully support China's chairmanship of the SCO meeting next year, which means, if you read between the lines, that he will go to China for the SCO summit, which means that the dialogue at the highest level will now be broken, will continue, and the ice that has settled on the process has been thawed. That is the most important thing to my mind. Secondly, the issues between India and China are very deep-rooted, and they go far beyond the border issue. And therefore, to imagine that we can now chart a new path in developing India-China ties, to my mind, would be too optimistic. Number three, going back to the SR mechanism doesn't hold out that much promise or hope, because this mechanism was set up when I was Foreign Secretary, and they have met more than 20 times. And in between, China lost interest in this mechanism altogether. And instead of focusing on the settlement of the border issue on a political basis, which was the mandate of the SR mechanism, it became a forum to discuss the overall India-China relationship. So the strategic focus and the around the settlement of the border issue was lost. Now, to go back to that process, unless I don't know what the mandate would be. Obviously, the mandate at that level can't be you resolve the issues which have cropped up post 2020. The mandate has to be the broader mandate which existed earlier. So I can't see how suddenly there's such a change of spirit on China's part that they're willing to look at the settlement of the border dispute. I mean, that's a much, much bigger process. Let's first settle the issues that happened in 2020. Fourth, in the statements that have come out, the readout that the External Affairs Ministry has given us, there is still not too much clarity as to what has been agreed. Certainly something has been agreed, and the Chinese side has said that they will implement the resolutions that have taken place. And our army chief has been very cautious that we have to do trust building, and that trust building will start once we start patrolling and then see that the other side is not clandestinely doing doing intrusions, etc., etc., which means over time this trust will be built. So there's no, the army chief did not talk about withdrawal from any specific areas. That process has yet to begin. And then we have been saying repeatedly that we are going back to the position as existed in 2020. Through official briefings, it appears that there will be a restart of patrolling in the Depsang and Demchok areas, but this has not come out officially. Now, if it happens, that's a very good thing, because that was what was blocking and creating a huge problem in terms of resolving the current border rift. Because the argument was that these were legacy issues, which actually occurred before 2020. Now, if these legacy issues are also now covered in the new understanding, it's something very positive. But then, what do we go back to? 1993, 1996, 2005, 2013, the earlier border management arrangements. The army chief says that they will have to, he has hinted that there will be new border arrangements which will be made and tried and tested. So this is going to be a long process. But I'll end by saying that the first step is very good. It's broken the big wall that had come between the two countries, where the two leaders were not talking to each other, and it was becoming embarrassing.
But Mr. Sibal, I'm a bit confused. I mean, I don't think anyone can be blamed for being confused here, because if this was talks for the sake of talks, then actually nothing has moved really forward. We could have done this 2 years back. We could have done this 3 years ago. We could have done this 2 weeks back, for all I care. I thought that talks and the resumption of dialogue, normalcy, etc. was all contingent upon movement forward and a degree of resolution on some of these issues. This is what the MEA, Jaishankar has been saying for the last 2 years. He said it to me in interviews. He said it to other people in interviews. So what's really changed that we've suddenly come back and said, okay, let's shake hands and let's have a conversation? And by the way, we were told by Mr. Jaishankar 2 days back that we are going to be going back to the 2020 status quo. And we were also told that there is going to be resumption of patrolling. These were not my words. These are the words that have been put out by at least two officials.
I think what he said was right, but the modalities of this have to be worked out. It was very clear from the Chief of Army Staff statement, saying that patrolling will resume is one thing, but the conditions under which it will resume and the new protocols that will be established, this is going to be discussed in order to avoid any further clash or misunderstanding or tensions because of patrolling. So I think it is a first step, an important step in defreezing the issue, and now the hard work has to be done of agreeing on certain ways of doing this on the ground, and this will be the next round of negotiation. And the Chinese side have said that we will implement the resolution, so they agree that some understandings have been reached, though there's no clarity as to what the scope of these understandings is, but understandings are there. And this has come from both sides. Now, to translate those understandings into practice on the ground, into concrete measures in terms of restoring the situation to 2020, this is the exercise that will be done now. Okay. But this is an exercise that will take time.
No, that of course. And you know, I don't think anyone is under the illusion that tomorrow everything is going to sort of become all clear and perfect. But Brahmachareni, let me bring you into this. Mr. Sibal believes there is an understanding. So there is some common ground that has been forged. Now, whether it is actually in Demchok or it is in any other part of the Ladakh Eastern Front where we've had tensions, we don't know. There's a lot of dark. But do you think that these talks, this handshake is enough to pave the way for the return to the 2020 status quo ante, number one? And is it possible to normalize relations with China? I mean, we've seen the Prime Minister interlocute with Xi Jinping, not once, not twice, not thrice, but about 4 or 5 times. I think he's been the most, I think this relationship between these two principles has been the most regular feature of engagements between bilateral countries, you know, apart from United States. And China had no problem stabbing us in the back.
You're right, Rahul. Before the Chinese encroachments in Eastern Ladakh, Modi and Xi Jinping met 18 times in formal meetings. In 18 meetings, you develop personal rapport with each other. Did those meetings give pause to Xi Jinping's expansionist designs against India? One other thing that we have to keep in mind, that just the way the Brics summit in Kazan has catalyzed efforts to reach some sort of an understanding between the two countries. There was already another Brics summit in 2017 in Xiamen, China, that led to a disengagement agreement after a 73-day troop standoff. That standoff occurred at the edge of the Doklam Plateau. How did that disengagement agreement go? No sooner had that disengagement agreement been signed, then China gave the impression that it was disengaging. It did pull back some of its forces, but within weeks, it went back, began building permanent military structures and permanent force deployments in Doklam. Before long, Doklam was teeming with Chinese barracks, helipads, ammunition dumps, and other facilities, as satellite images discovered. And by the time Modi went to Wuhan in 2018, March 2018, Doklam had come under Chinese control. Well, Doklam, as you know, was never Indian territory, but India is a de facto security guarantor of Bhutan. So we have to keep in mind that if you look at the present understanding, the Chinese have been cryptic in the sense that they have been not, they have not even used the word patrolling arrangement with India. Their wording has been so vague, and Xi Jinping in his opening statement today did not mention any agreement with India. Only Modi did mention an agreement between the two countries. So all this should make us exercise some caution. The fact is that if 18 meetings between Xi and Modi fail to moderate or restrain China's behavior, or the fact that since the standoff began after the Chinese encroachments in the last 4 years and 5 months, that China has doubled its trade surplus with India. So even that booming trade surplus with India has not constrained China's behavior vis-a-vis India. So given that backdrop, I think we should not go overboard. I think the Foreign Minister Jaishankar clearly jumped the gun when he said 2 days ago that we have now returned to the 2020 situation and that the disengagement process is complete. Now we're hearing the opposite. We're hearing that that talks are underway to prepare the roadmap for disengagement. Now we are being told that the army chief said that it is our goal that we should return to the pre-April 2020 situation. So it's going to be a lengthy process. It might.
But let me ask you very quickly before I open this up. Let me ask you, Mr. Chileni. You know, is this not even a question of taking a step forward? You seem to suggest that this was just a meeting for the cameras. There was more optics here, maybe to send a larger message. Maybe Mr. Putin said, come on, guys, shake hands because I really want to send a message to the West. And that's what's happening here.
No. There's a genuine desire on the part of both Beijing and New Delhi to lower tensions at the border and to improve relations because these tensions and the standoff are detracting from each country's larger geopolitical goals. But having said that, we should not confound symbolism with substance. Meeting between two leaders does not change things overnight because we have seen how close an engagement between Xi Jinping and Modi failed to prevent
that of course
deterioration in relations.
That of course is true, and yes, viewers, there are no timelines either. So clearly some of those issues really required to be thrashed out, and no one can actually predict how long that will take. So no one is committed to any timelines. Only the Indian side seemed to suggest that patrolling would resume very soon. So I don't know where that has come from, but nonetheless, Andrew, KP Leung, let me bring you in. There is a genuine desire of that. The statements testify. So I have to ask you these questions. Is dwindling legitimacy forcing Xi back to the table after stonewalling for 5 years? And all the signs that we're seeing seem to be suggesting this.
Well, I don't think that there's any question about President Xi's legitimacy in the eyes of the Chinese people. It's not what I said. It is confirmed by the recent research by the Harvard Kennedy School Ash Center report, which was out in, I think, 2027 or something. And then further by the New York-based Edelman Trust Barometer, only the latest which came out only about last month, confirming that the Chinese government is amongst the best trusted by its people around the world, using their proprietary research methods. Multiple ranks above many Western democracies, including the United States. That's New York-based Edelman Trust Barometer. Google that. Now, thirdly, and also the Paris-based Ipsos Center also found the same finding. It's because the lives of the Chinese people have been miraculously transformed under the
Andrew KP Leung, have you seen the numbers? Have you seen the numbers? Well, I mean, look at hard data that's coming out of China. I'm not inventing this. Should I read out some of the numbers?
No. I'm quoting Western sources.
No, talk about the data that the Chinese themselves are releasing. It doesn't actually paint a very rosy picture. I mean, I have to ask you, are you earning as much as you were last year?
No, I'm not quoting Chinese sources. I'm quoting internationally respected research centers.
I hope it's not the United Nations. Because they gave you a clean sheet on Wuhan and the virus.
Because the BRICS summit is more than bilateral relations. And it binds all the developing countries in the Global South, particularly countries like China and India.
But we've had some in the past, in the last 5 years. No, one second, Mr. Leung. I'm very confused here. I'm sorry. I've been really thrown off my game today. Okay, I just have to ask you this question, very pointed question. We've had BRICS summits over the last 5 years. But we haven't suddenly, after 5 years, we've had Mr. Xi Jinping deciding to shake hands with the Prime Minister. You saw what happened a year back when they sort of brushed past each other and they sort of, I mean, you know, it looked as if they were going to sort of slice each other up. What's changed? Something has changed.
A lot has changed, my dear.
For the worse.
My dear anchor. Well, I mean, look at the world. I mean, look at how the world global order has become fractured. Look at what's happening over Gaza. Look what's happening in Ukraine. Look what's happening in the global south. They're all rising up to safeguard the sovereignty, the development paths, the need for respect and independence. So that's what's gluing, that's what's helping to glue all the developing countries together in this big forum. And that's why both India and China's leadership want to reset the relationship.
Just
you
a
mentioned
second.
5
Let
years.
me just look. Let me put out Chinese data. I'm not counting here on the United States and their great institutes and so forth, because they cook up stories and we've begun to realize that. So hang on. Let me just point to you some Chinese data. Growth has been plunging to 4.6% in the third quarter, the lowest in 18 months. So if you've still not got a pay cut, you're lucky. Consider yourself very lucky. China's president himself finds himself today in uncharted waters. This hasn't happened quarter on quarter, viewers. More data. About 30% of the economy, the property sector that held that up, that has been in a slump for 3 straight years. Youth unemployment rate surged to 18.8% in August. So Andrew KP Leung, you still have a job. A lot of young people don't have a job. 30-year government bond yields are dangerously converging with Japan, signaling a troubling descent into economic and demographic stagnation. Are you telling me all of this is not having an issue, not having an impact on Xi Jinping?
I think President Xi is well aware of that. In fact, he was very upfront about the headwinds China is facing, and the whole
now
Chinese
you say
people
they're facing
that.
headwinds.
I in Hong Kong know that.
Okay, well at least you've conceded.
Headwinds facing many
Viewers, the
countries,
hard facts on
and
this
China's
show, you can't escape them. Now he's telling me that there are headwinds, and Mr. Xi has actually confirmed that. He's been honest about it. So viewers, when there are headwinds, there are problems. And that's why perhaps Xi Jinping also needs... Okay. Go ahead. Finish.
Okay. Well, I think we were talking about bilateral relationship. We're talking about a global relationship, and that's what this BRICS summit is all about.
Right.
Because the whole world has changed.
Right.
The whole world has
changed.
become
Okay. Well,
and
China is changing.
China
IMF estimates local governments are saddled with over 60 trillion yuan, which is $8.43 trillion in debt. That's nearly half of China's GDP. With Goldman Sachs, the American Institute, Goldman Sachs, calculating about 12 trillion yuan of this credit is troubled. Dr. Ranganathan, PM Modi and Xi meet is a signal to the West, says KP Leung, that everything is hunky-dory, that we need to come together because we need to present an alternative global view of the world. But it also tells the West, this meeting, and I want to ask you this because you often talked about it, of India's ability to go toe-to-toe with any power in the world. And I see this as an outcome of us also sort of digging our heels in.
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Once again, you have put me bang in the middle of such luminaries that, I feel at the touch of being embarrassed. But
just don't quote US institutions. Yeah.
Or at least institutions that aren't funded majorly by China. No, but it's a real pleasure to be on this panel. I reiterate, I speak as a complete layman, as a common man who always worries and wants the best for India, as everyone else does, including, I'm sure, Andrew. Look, I think Chinese at best have always been inscrutable. So rather than guessing as to what the intentions of President Xi would be or what China's intentions would be, I am more concerned about what our intentions are in facilitating this thaw. Because a thaw is always good, de-escalation is always good, but at what cost to us? So here I'd like to make 2 or 3 points because, as you rightly quoted, and I believe you, China might be going into the future, near future, in economic trouble, maybe collapse. But that begs the question, Pakistan is under a bigger economic collapse than China. Does that mean that we should thaw our relations and be friendly and shake hands with Pakistan? If at all, China is not our friend. So why are we, quote unquote, helping it out by, thawing relations? So something is there that I don't understand, but still I try to understand from the Indian point of view, because we are a democracy and we demand answers from our government. So there are three questions out here. Number one, let's be very honest about it. China is not our friend. Everyone understands it. China is not also our friend who's a competitor, which again is fine. China is our competitor. Now, despite this, the three areas where we are obviously at loggerheads with China have been: one, on security, where Mr. Sibbal and Mr. Cheleni have already emphasized and spoken in detail about. I don't profess to know as much detail as they do, so I'll kind of skip that, except to say that de-escalation at the border area, which going forward as a common man, I believe will not be solved for possibly decades to come, is always good. Let's de-escalate there. Number two, and this is very important, the fact of the matter is China is not our friend. As far as foreign policy is concerned, China has always opposed us in international forums, especially UN. China has always sided with Pakistan. China has always been a votary, gone against us on Kashmir. So on foreign policy, let's be very honest, China's ideas as far as India is concerned are not going to change, which again begs the question, why are we thawing it? But the most important is the final aspect, Rahul. If China is in economic trouble, then can I please say that right now our trade deficit with China is to the tune of an astonishing $85 billion. I mean, we are importing goods worth $101 billion from China. Our exports to China have remained roughly stagnant at $15 to $16 billion. Yep. Now, this doesn't happen in a case where we are projecting ourselves as Atmanirbhar. So something clearly has gone wrong. We haven't produced a white paper. We haven't gone ahead and kind of wrenched companies that after COVID devastation would have liked to move here more. So the third final point I'd like to make is based on the economy part of it. That is what concerns me most as a common man. After thawing these relations, are we going to reduce this trade imbalance? If we are, then it is for good.
Okay, Mr. Sibbal, let's address, the common man's concerns, so to speak. What are we getting out of this? Fine, we've shaken hands, and now we're going to sit across the table. There are no timelines. There is not even a roadmap to where we are supposed to go with these conversations. There is all sorts of talk about people sitting across each other, boundary commissions, this, that, the other. To what end?
A couple of things. One, that while I agree that the statistics show that the Chinese economy is in trouble, but let's not forget it's a huge economy. It's the world's biggest manufacturing power. And it has huge financial resources, foreign exchange reserves. So they have enough capacity internally to be able to deal with these problems. And any thinking that China might economically collapse, or it is China's economic woes that are forcing them to patch up with India, is not a line of argument that I'll entirely endorse. I think it is imposing costs on China, but it's also imposing costs on us. And we are a smaller economy. And if we continue to bear the costs of confrontation, it will actually it will slow down our own growth rate. However, we have to defend ourselves. And if there's sacrifice to be made, we will make it. In the case of China, they are not defending themselves, frankly. There's no threat from India. It's part of their territorial expansionist outlook and asserting their sovereignty everywhere they can. So it's a more aggressive strategy, so they can afford to pull back.
Right.
Now, they may have made the calculation that after 5 years of confrontation, their expectations have not been met. India has not backed off. India, in fact, is strengthening its position on the ground. And on the basis of a cost-benefit ratio, It is not helping China. If China wants to come across to the world as a peacemaker, they try to broker peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran, between Russia and Ukraine. and now in the Middle East also they want to broker peace, then somebody can ask the question, why don't you do something about your confrontation with India?
Okay.
Where is that, your peace initiative? Why don't they extend to your immediate neighborhood? Number two, I think they're beginning to see that the situation in West Asia is becoming much more difficult for them. With the United States now bolstering its alliances, the confrontation with Philippines, encouraging the Americans to become more deeply involved in this area. Japan wants NATO to get extended to that region. They want Quad, in fact, to turn into some kind of an Asian NATO. And therefore, from Xi Jinping's point of view, China's point of view, this process has to be arrested. And the best way to do it, or in any case, this will contribute to a lot to what they have in mind, is to patch up with India to the extent that that can be done, so that pressures on China are released. Finally, one last point. Our military chief also said that the talks that have been held with China with regard to disengagement on the border also extends to Arunachal Pradesh. So there is a wider basis of a kind of an understanding that has been reached. But the proof of the pudding will lie in its eating. So let's see how things move forward.
If you say that if he says that it's extended to Arunachal Pradesh, I hope we are not ending up making any concessions. I think Brahmachalani had concerns about that and he expressed it a few days back. Well, viewers, let's progress further because there's also politics raging in the background. So we've had our focused discussion on the takeaways from this meeting, but even before the talks could begin, the Congress party and others in the related ecosystem began to fire barbs at Prime Minister Modi. The Congress fired a list of 6 questions. The Congress sought to suggest that the NDA needed to come clean, as thus far Modi's approach could be described as DDLJ. And DDLJ, viewers, is also an acronym for a famous movie. But in this case, the Congress said DDLJ stands for deny, distract, lie and justify. So they're accusing the Prime Minister of first being in denial about what perhaps has been actually attained. Then he's talking about distracting from the issue at hand and lying to the Indian public and then justifying all these things. So let's open this up, and I want to bring in a sympathizer of the Congress, Tehseen Poonawala, and of course Dr. Ranganathan is there also with us. Mr. Poonawala, very quickly, and I just want to be direct here because I'm not going to beat around the bush. I know that Rahul Gandhi wants to tell India that this meeting is not significant at all, even though we've just heard 2 very seasoned experts say that this is a step in the right direction. Yes, things have to fructify, and we still have certain blanks left, perhaps because no one wants to sort of hold anybody to anything. Maybe that's the reason, not raise expectations too much. But Rahul Gandhi has always said that Modi is failing the test of diplomacy and foreign policy because he cannot settle the China issue. Now he's done it, and the Congress has a problem. So damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
Good evening, thank you.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Rahul, good evening. Rahul, good evening. Thank you so much for having me on the show at the onset. Once again, bow down before Colonel Santosh Babu and the rest of the 20 martyrs who laid down their life defending the Galwan Valley. And look, there are pertinent questions that need to be raised, and Rahul Gandhi ji is correct on these steps. Now, I'm just quoting you, Rahul. Step in the right direction, fructify, we don't want to raise expectations. If all these adjectives are being used by you, Rahul, today on this show, why did the Honorable Prime Minister lie to you, Rahul, to you, when he said, na koi aaya tha, na koi aa saka? If koi nahi aaya tha, koi aa nahi saka tha, so then why are we going, how are we going back to pre-2020 as has been said by our Honorable External Affairs Minister? That's point number 1. That means somebody had come in. That is when Colonel Santosh Babu and 20 other martyrs lost their life defending our motherland. No. Let's come to the second more important point.
Yeah.
We now know that the Chinese, for example, the bottleneck junction at Depsang near the Radi Nala Valley, from where India used to patrol, was blocked by armored vehicles. It was blocked. Let me give you another example of Pangong Tso, where we used to patrol up to Finger 8, and I've repeatedly raised this with you. Are we, specific question, going to patrol up to Finger 8, which is our territory? Are we going to enter across the bottleneck area, across the Radinala Valley, which is our area, or we are not going to do that? Now, the third thing that's come out, which nobody is speaking about, this agreement's not been made public, it's not been given to journalists, it's not been given to the oppositions while we are a democracy. But what's been told very clearly is, listen, only 14 Indian soldiers can go in our own territory, that too twice a month. Only 14 Indian soldiers, patrol of 14, that too twice a month.
Okay.
Why isn't the government clarifying on this?
Okay.
Lastly, if we've gone to the pre-2020 level, if we've gone to the pre-2020 level, that is not being said by China. The Chinese statement, and I read it thrice, does not say we've gone back to the pre-2020 level, which means the gains we had in Kailash Heights have completely been squandered. These are very important questions that the government is refusing to answer.
Okay. First things first, let me tell you, viewers, that line is not defined. So the Chinese would also come into, to Finger 4 of the Pangong Tso, and we would go up to 8. Suddenly, the Chinese decided that they were going to block us. This is what is known as a kind of no man's land, because it's not been defined whether our claim extends to 8 and their claim extends to 4. So imagine, viewers, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we could go up to here, they could come up till here. Now somehow in the middle, viewers, this is a buffer. Somehow we have a problem where we weren't allowed to go to 8.
Ask a question on
we
that.
weren't allowed to.
Just
a minute. Just a minute, sir. You've spoken. I want to bring in Dr. Ranganath. I'm just putting it out there for viewers to understand, because it's not easy to understand.
On that, so you can add just one question.
One second. Dr. Ranganathan, look, I think the prime focus of the Congress is that the Prime Minister said no one came in and we haven't lost anything. That's fundamentally their problem. And I don't think they are being very honest with the facts on the ground.
Honest about this, the same Rahul Gandhi and his advisors then were reiterating the fact that the McMahon line and the LAC, unlike the LOC, remains undefined at most places and is, quote, categorized under differing perception, unquote. Even the status quo, they said, is disputed by both sides. So these transgressions, they said, are historical in nature. But the moment 2014 comes and Modi comes to think, suddenly everything erupts. The same Rahul thought nothing of Chinese transgressions before 2014 during Congress rule. Let me remind him what his advisor said, and I quote, the India-China border is not yet defined. And so when the Chinese make incursions, it only means that they haven't entered our territory, unquote. But when Modi comes, suddenly Chinese start entering our territory. The same Rahul was tight-lipped when China occupied 640 square kilometers of eastern Ladakh during the UPA. A fact reiterated not by you or me, Sanghis, but by UPA's own foreign secretary. And who knows, perhaps calling for the breakup of Ladakh was an obligation on part of the Congress in that MOU that is signed with the Communist Party of India, of China, I beg your pardon, back in 2008. The same Rahul was tight-lipped when China managed to make 600 incursions into the Indian side between 2000 and 2013, including in 2013 when the Chinese entered 28 kilometers deep into our territory at Depsang, including on June 17, 2013, when Chinese transgressed deep into Chumar. The fact of the matter is that including even on Galwan, the very same Galwan that Modi was accused of losing to China, the same Galwan was under Chinese occupation before 2014 as quote. Since the 1962 war, China has extended its control over the entire Galwan River, unquote. Now what can you say? The moment Modi comes to power, everything changes. Rahul Gandhi forgets what China-India equations were before 2014. What can you reply to this, Rahul?
Okay, there are now 2 points of view, viewers. One from Mr. Tehseen Poonawalla and one from Dr. Ranganathan. I'm leaving it at this, viewers, because we have 2 views and all of us can keep going back and forth. There'll be no resolution. But Tehseen Poonawalla, you have to bear with me because we have to move on to a very important subject, one that you're very closely associated with. You're actually a family member, and you would be able to put some perspective on this with greater clarity. There's another dawn for dynasticism in the Congress. I'm not saying this, viewers. The BJP is saying this, and it is obvious. After the Nehru-Gandhi years, the Vadras are now ready to leave their imprint upon the grand old party Priyanka Gandhi Vadra has filed her nomination for the Wayanad LS bypoll, the Lok Sabha bypoll. As you know, the seat was vacated by her brother, who will continue as an MP from Amethi. After the nomination, Vadra, who was accompanied by her son and husband and mother and brother, addressed the people of the constituency that is deemed exceptionally safe for her. Vadra, who is being attacked for having been parachuted by the Congress over other local and therefore grassroots talent, made it a point to stress that she was going to be committed long-term to the uplift of voters. She said, quote, Wayanad's strength lies in its people, their kindness, resilience and belief in a better future. I will listen to your voices, raise the issues that matter to you and work tirelessly for the progress of Wayanad. I just hope that she stays in, viewers, longer than her brother did, because if you go back to 2019, these are exactly the things that Rahul Gandhi had said. Now, of course, he's dumped the voters of Wayanad so that he can continue to nurse Amethi, which he won back from Smriti Irani. Now, viewers, her brother, her brother, Rahul Gandhi, also made it a point to knock down the outside attack that has been levelled by the opposition. And I quote, Priyanka has always been someone who would sacrifice anything for her family and friends, and this quality will make her an exceptional MP for Wayanad. To her, the people of Wayanad are family. As her brother, I ask you to support and protect her as you may have done for me. I will always stand by Wayanad as your unofficial MP. So viewers, he's going to constantly look over her shoulder. This is a bit bizarre. Let's open this up. Let's ask some fundamental questions. Relative of the Vadra Gandhi family is here with us, Tehseen Poonawalla. We also have, of course, Dr. Ranganathan. There are many questions that are emerging, Tehseen Poonawalla. The first one, are we now seeing the birth of a new era led by the Vadras? Is the Congress now going to be led by the Vadras in the next 10, 15, 20 years and further on as the Vadras unspool their dynasty? And as you know, Ms. Vadra's son was there also looking over his mother's shoulder, as Priyanka had done, looking over her mother's shoulder when she used to file nominations. So the signs are there. And there's also, of course, Mr. Robert Vadra, who's made his political intentions very, very clear. So Nehru's, Gandhi's and Vadras. This is succession. This is a party that has been now reserved for the family.
And the question is, Rahul?
Isn't this a party reserved for the family? It's just become a family fief and an extension of the family's time in office. That's it.
Is Mrs. Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, when she gets elected from Wayanad, be elected by the members of her family, or will they be elected by the electorate of Wayanad? And I think that answers your question. In your introduction, you said Rahul Gandhi has dumped Wayanad. Did Prime Minister Modi dump Vadodara from where he contested in 2014? Why are these adjectives used for Priyanka Gandhi Vadra ji and Rahul Gandhi ji? I don't understand. The fact of the matter is, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra ji is the General Secretary of the Congress. She's contributed immensely. All Congress karyakartas, all Congress supporters like myself and all Congress leaders expected her to contest. And I think if she's going to contest in Wayanad, it's great. And we do want her to make a parliamentary debut in the Lok Sabha. It'll be fantastic to have her because she's very good in English, in Hindi. She'll lead the charge. And we look forward to her role in parliament and strengthening democracy.
Okay. Well,
how is there anything undemocratic? Also, if the mother and the son are there, if a mother and a son are there to support the daughter and the mother, what is wrong in it?
Okay.
If my son
breaking news is coming in. Even as we speak,
him?
BJP's national spokesperson Amit Valvia has tweeted, and I quote, as per poll affidavit, Priyanka Vadra's net worth is 12 crore. Her husband Robert Vadra's worth is 66 crore. But what is interesting is that there are pending IT demands of approximately 80 crores for assessment years between 2010 and 2021. If this is their brazenness, when Congress is out of power, contesting IT demands in court over decades requires significant legal maneuvering. Can one only imagine the free run they must have had when Sonia Gandhi was the super PM? This underlines, according to the BJP, the exceptionalism and the privilege that the Vadras enjoy, Dr. Ranganathan.
No, there's no doubt about it. But, a couple of things that Tehseen said is at variance with logic. Because the first rationalization or excuse that anybody gives when one wants to dismiss the notion of dynasty or scion is the fact that the people are electing. Fair enough. That's true. Because yes, Rahul Gandhi is a dynast, as a scion, so is Priyanka Gandhi, and if she wins, then Tehseen would be justified in saying that the people have elected her or people have elected him. But what he fails to mention is the crucial first mover advantage. All he has to say is Priyanka Gandhi is very good in Hindi and English. Well, so is Tehseen. Is Tehseen fighting? Has Tehseen ever been given a ticket? I dare say, I put my bottom dollar on this or rupee on this, that Tehseen is more intelligent, more articulate than Priyanka Gandhi or Rahul Gandhi. Why is he not fighting or given a ticket for Congress? Because he doesn't enjoy the first mover advantage. So please, at least mention that. Yes, the people elect the dynast, people elect the scion, but those people are chosen simply because they enjoy the first mover advantage. Number two, I like to ask Tehseen this because, this often gets ignored. Why Wayanad? Tehseen, why Wayanad? What is so special about the demography or the topography of Wayanad that you have to go all the way, leave your bastions of Rai Bareli and Amethi? Why was Amethi not relinquished and given for Priyanka Gandhi to fight? Why was Wayanad chosen? Can you please reflect on the demography of this? Is the demography of Wayanad going to help the dynasty of Congress?
No, one thing, Dr. Ranganathan, you missed a point. Yes, he might be overlooked for a ticket, but now he has done the next best thing. Tehseen Punala, you married into the family, so you can easily contest now because you're part of it.
He's made an offer you cannot refuse.
Yes. So Tehseen Punala, this is a fact, isn't it? Yeah, now you actually might get the next ticket from Muradabad or you do I know nurse political ambitions, so you might just get the ticket. The surname will help you.
No, my surname is Poonawala. It's my wife's surname, and I haven't taken her surname. But more importantly,
you can be a modern man. You can take her surname. No problems.
No, I don't. No, that's fine. We share and care. But the more important point, Rahul, is I would rather, the only ambitions I nurse is to be on a debate with you, and in the evening, at the end of the debate, to be treated to steamed baturas by Dr. Ranganathan, who does. So that's not the ambition that I nurse. Anything beyond that. But let me make a couple of points. Why are these dynasty attacks only on the Gandhis all the time? The same logic, if what Dr. Ranganathan spoke for Mrs. Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, applies to Anurag Thakur, Dushant Singh, applies to Rajnath Singh ji's son, applies to everyone else in politics, Gopinath Munde ji's daughter, applies to Devendra Fadnavis ji, applies to Ravi Shankar Prasad ji. Why does this only get reserved for the Gandhis?
Dr. Ranganathan, why?
In fact, Mohan Bhagwat ji himself, Mohan Bhagwat ji himself is a dynast. The head of RSS himself is a dynast.
Okay.
Whose father's book was released by Prime Minister Modi.
No.
Is dynasty only related to the Congress? More importantly, the second part of the question.
Yes.
Isn't Kerala part of India, an integral part of India?
No, of course it is.
There
are also young Kerala. There are also young.
Is something that we have to fight against.
No. There are also young people in Wayanad who work with the Congress relentlessly, who stood when Wayanad was recently devastated
and
in knee-deep quicksand almost, in the bogs, to rescue people. They haven't been given a ticket.
When the union government refused
maybe they
to
should
help
have been
Kerala
given a ticket. Anyhow,
and compared it to Somalia.
Okay. Let me just bring in Dr. Ranganathan on that question. And we are also, of course, forgetting that today a big asset disclosure has been made. And there are some mind-boggling numbers, Dr. Ranganathan. Look at those on your screen.
No, I don't think they're mind-boggling enough, judging by their dynasty and what it's capable of. So this is possibly a drop in the ocean. Tehseen would, of course, know the details. But a couple of questions out here. Number one, is it not a fact that all the ecological details and the activists who were fighting for the environment there had, in fact, the committees that were set up by the Congress when Congress was ruling at the center, cautioned to not have any business dealings or any buildings or interests built on Wayanad. They were ruthlessly ignored by Rahul Gandhi when he was not an MP of Wayanad and when he was the MP of Wayanad. So Priyanka is going to fight at the same level. So let's not talk about the flood and the rehabilitation that happened. The disaster happened because Rahul Gandhi turned a blind eye. Number two, Tehseen is barking up the wrong tree when he's saying, well, the BJP also does it, much to my I don't know, disadvantage or whatever you may call it. I was the first one to rattle out 94 names of BJP MPs and MLAs who are first generation dynasts. And I did it at a conference that was organized by the BJP to blast the living daylights of Congress. The conference was titled Dynasty a Scourge.
Okay, just very quickly, Tehseen Purana, you said is Kerala not India? Well, UP, Rajasthan, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Delhi, Maharashtra also India. She could have picked up any. Yeah, she could have picked any seat.
May I? But let me tell my friend Dr. Ranganathan, this committee set up by the then UPA government was a central government committee which under this current government has been weakened because it does not concern Kerala itself, it concerns Karnataka, Maharashtra, Goa, the entire Western Ghats. But more importantly,
what were the conclusions
let me ask you one question. Let me put one fact under Rahul Gandhi ji, Wayanad won the best district performance repeatedly under Niti Aayog, which is set up by Prime Minister Modi. That's how it's performed under Rahul Gandhi ji.
Okay, viewers, let me tell you, if that were the case, one would have expected Rahul Gandhi to continue his affiliation with Wayanad, especially when it is going through such a trying period. But he decided not to. He's picked Rai Bareli, viewers, not Wayanad. And then he says, my sister will be there full time. Why not just ask a young person from your Congress party who will be there full time because they are from there and who actually did some rescue and relief work to contest. These are some questions, of course, that need to be asked. Dynasticism is quite omnipresent in Indian politics, but someone needs to now, viewers, draw a line. And I'll also tell you that the controversy that is brewing around assets and unpaid tax returns, viewers, is going to become bigger tomorrow, day after. It's going to be perhaps even the lead debate here on The Hard Facts and on other shows. I'll leave it at this. Thank you.
This Diwali, a firm handshake there right before the bilateral meeting began. We see the two leaders sit down with their teams on both sides. Several issues were...
to meet you in Kazan. It's the first time for us to have a formal meeting in 5 years' time. Both the people in our two countries and the international community are paying great attention to our meeting. China and India are both ancient civilizations, major developing countries, and important members of the global south. We are both at a crucial phase in our respective modernization endeavors. It best serves the fundamental interests of our two countries and two peoples, for both sides to keep to the trend of history and the right direction of our bilateral relations. It's important for both sides to have more communication and cooperation, properly handle our differences and disagreements, and to facilitate each other's pursuit of development aspirations. It's also important for both sides to shoulder our international responsibility, set an example for boosting the strength and unity of the developing countries, and to contribute to promoting multipolarization and democracy in international relations. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm prepared to exchange views with Your Excellency on our bilateral relationship and issues of mutual interest.
Excellency, आपसे मिलकर खुशी है और जैसा आपने कहा 5 साल के बाद हमारी ये फॉर्मल मीटिंग हो रही है। हमारा मानना है कि भारत और चीन के संबंधों का महत्व केवल हमारे लोगों के लिए ही नहीं, लेकिन वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और प्रगति के लिए भी हमारे संबंध बहुत अहम है। एक्सेलेंसी, सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए। आज इन सभी विषयों पर बात करने का अवसर मिला है। मुझे विश्वास है कि हम खुले मन से बातचीत करेंगे और हमारी चर्चा कंस्ट्रक्टिव होगी। धन्यवाद।
तो दोनों नेताओं के बीच ये मुलाकात हुई है रूस के
remarks of both those leaders there before the bilateral. The Prime Minister making it very clear that what's transpired at the line of actual control in the last 4 years needs to be amended. We welcome the step that has been taken as far as disengagement at the line of actual control is concerned. Mutual trust and respect is required. Mutual sensitivity is also key to ensure that there is stability at the line of actual control, was a clear message that the Prime Minister sent out during that bilateral meeting. Several other issues, of course, did come up, but the situation at the line of actual control is one that focus is going to be on, because that is going to decide the course of what else is discussed and the outcome of everything else, because this, of course, is going to be of topmost priority. Relations between India and China needs to be stable, not just for the two countries, but also for global peace, is what the Prime Minister said. Let's listen into that comment once again.
एक्सेलेंसी, आपसे मिलकर खुशी है, और जैसा आपने कहा 5 साल के बाद हमारी ये फॉर्मल मीटिंग हो रही है। हमारा मानना है कि भारत और चीन के संबंधों का महत्व केवल हमारे लोगों के लिए ही नहीं, लेकिन वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और प्रगति के लिए भी हमारे संबंध बहुत अहम है। एक्सेलेंसी, सीमा पार पिछले 4 वर्षों में उत्पन्न हुए मुद्दों पर बनी सहमति का हम स्वागत करते हैं। सीमा पर शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखना हमारी प्राथमिकता रहनी चाहिए। म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट, म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट और म्यूचुअल सेंसिटिविटी हमारे संबंधों का आधार बने रहना चाहिए। आज इन सभी विषयों पर बात करने का अवसर मिला है। मुझे विश्वास है कि हम खुले मन से बातचीत करेंगे और हमारी चर्चा कंस्ट्रक्टिव होगी। धन्यवाद।
That was the Prime Minister there.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The big meeting has happened in Russia. Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Chinese President Xi Jinping. It was their first bilateral meeting in 5 years, and it comes days after the two sides announced a border deal. What did the leaders say? What are the key takeaways? We'll discuss all of that. We'll also talk about